So Dr. Fauci has had now thousands of his emails released through the Freedom of Information Act, starting at the beginning of the pandemic. And the story isn't getting very much coverage, except for the few glowing headlines from the ever-reliable mainstream media. But let's take a look at first how they want you to view this story. Then I'll show you what's really going on in those emails and what's being completely ignored by any of the mainstream media, and how Zuckerberg and others are all involved in this. From CNN yesterday, thousands of emails from and to Dr. Fauci reveal the weight that came with his role as a rare source of frank honesty with the Trump administration's COVID-19 task force. Wow. From the Washington Post, the correspondence from March and April 2020 opens a window to Fauci's world during some of the most frantic days of the crisis, when the longtime director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases was struggling to bring coherence to the Trump administration's chaotic response to the virus, and President Trump seeking to minimize its severity. From CNBC, Dr. Fauci's 18-hour workday includes 2 breaks in answering, quote, emails until I'm too tired that I just can't do it anymore. Wow. Wow. He's a saint. So that's the media narrative. That's what the arbiters of truth have decided is the main takeaway from the Fauci email dump. You're supposed to take away that Dr. Fauci is Mother Teresa in pants. Just a poor old man who has worked tirelessly, emailing people until 1 a.m, never taking a break, trying his best to make the most out of a confusing and scary time, while also battling against the corrupt and idiotic Trump administration and their supporters, who attempted to thwart Fauci's heroic efforts in every turn. So don't even bother to read the emails. We read them for you. There's nothing there. Just a poor white man, old really, muzzled by an evil orange bully. Except that's nowhere near what's actually going on in the emails. The media have done what they have done for decades. They completely ignored what cuts against what Trump and conservatives have been saying all along, and they show you how grossly unprofessional and unqualified Dr. Fauci was and still is. So let's take a look at what is explicitly in the emails, starting with Dr. Fauci admitting that he was never muzzled by the Trump administration. March 2nd, 2020, Dr. Fauci responded to an email asking if he'd ever been felt muzzled by the Trump administration, stating, "I've been very explicit in stating that I am not being muzzled or censored. I say exactly what I want to say based on scientific evidence. I've stated this on multiple TV programs of the past few days, including at major press conferences with many, many reporters present, including TV cameras. I could not possibly be more public about this. No censor, no muzzle, free to speak out." So there we are. Dr. Fauci in an email debunking the biggest claim from early on in the pandemic that Trump was censoring Dr. Fauci, refusing to allow him to speak freely about science. So right off the bat, a major reveal in and of itself about the press. We know that it's not true that they're still carrying water for it. But let's go back to something that he actually stated in the email. He said, "I say what I want to say based on scientific evidence." Really? Really? Scientific evidence, Mr., double, triple masks. He says what he wants to say based on scientific evidence. Well, let's look at masks. We all know how big Fauci is on masks. He's the biggest reason why so many Americans are the mask police that they are today. So what did Mr. Scientific Evidence originally have to say about the effectiveness of masks? February 5th, 2020, Fauci responded to an email from a woman asking if she should wear a mask at an airport while traveling, stating this: "Masks are really for infected people to prevent them from spreading infection to people who are not infected, rather than protecting uninfected people from acquiring infection. The typical mask you buy in the drugstore is really not effective in keeping out the virus, which is small enough to pass through the material, something we have been saying for a very long time. I do not recommend that you wear a mask, particularly since you're going to a very low-risk location. In another email sent February 4th, Fauci stated, most transmissions occur from someone who is symptomatic, not asymptomatic. All right, so what did he just say in those emails? Not only did he explicitly state that masks are not beneficial to prevent you from getting COVID, but he also threw in that he doesn't recommend wearing a mask at an airport, calling it a low-risk location. Well, gee, I know our Department of Homeland Security just issued orders where if you're not wearing a mask at the airport, they need to treat you the same, and I'm quoting, as someone who is trying to smuggle on a gun or another prohibited item onto the plane. How many months have we been through with mask mandates now? People claiming that if you don't wear a mask, you'll get COVID. Then you'll pass it on to millions, because, and you'll be the cause of deaths of everybody's grandma. Why do airports still have mask mandates in place? Why? This is something Dr. Fauci admitted early on. So what has changed? Why hasn't he recommended the end of the mask mandates for uninfected people and airports? But that's not all. That's not even close to how much these emails exposed how unqualified and irresponsible Dr. Fauci was during the pandemic. Remember when Trump recommended hydroxychloroquine? And everybody went haywire, claiming that Trump was suggesting citizens poison themselves with a drug that has no proof of being effective. Well, March 18th, 2020, the physicist Eric Nielsen sent Dr. Fauci a lengthy email claiming multiple things, such as his belief that China is lying about their death count, the origin of the virus, the mislabeling of flu deaths as COVID deaths in the U.S., but most importantly, his studies showed that two drugs, Alvesco and hydroxychloroquine, being safe and efficient ways to fight against the virus. What was Dr. Fauci's response to this? March 19th, 2020, Dr. Fauci responded simply, too long for me to read. Oh, okay. You didn't even read something about hydroxychloroquine? Okay. He knew the origin at the time. The origin of the virus was most likely man-made in China. But maybe that was too much to read as well. I don't know if you saw what Tucker Carlson did last night, but I want to quote him on several of the emails that Fauci wrote and are available because of the Freedom of Information request from BuzzFeed. And they go back to the early winter of 2020. At the very beginning, the emails show that Fauci was worried that the public might conclude that COVID had originated at the Wuhan Institute of Virology. Now, why would Tony Fauci be concerned that Americans would conclude that? Possibly because Tony Fauci knew perfectly well that he had funded gain-of-function experiments at the very same laboratory. Remember, gain-of-function was banned by the Obama administration. But for some reason, after Obama left the White House, somebody just okayed it and sent the money. Emails now prove that Fauci lied about this under oath. Consider the exchange which began the evening of January 31st, 2020. It was Friday, just before midnight. The first email came in from an immunologist called Christian Anderson, who works at the Scripps Research Institute at La Jolla, California. Anderson warned Fauci that COVID appeared to be possibly manipulated in a laboratory. Quote, the unusual features of the virus make up a really small part of the genome, less than 0.1%. So one has to look really closely at all the sequences to see that some of the features potentially look engineered. The very next day, February 1st, Tony Fauci wrote back, thanks, Christian. Talk soon on the call. Fauci then sent an urgent email to his deputy. The subject of the email, all caps, was important. Here's what the email said. Hugh, it is essential that we speak this morning. Keep your cell phone on. Read this paper as well as the email that I forwarded. You will have tasks today that must be done. Attached to the email was a document entitled Barack Shi et al. Nature Medicine SARS Gain of Function.pdf. Now, the Beck in the attachment referred to Ralph Beck, a virologist based in the U.S., who collaborated with the Wuhan Institute of Virology. Beck worked with a woman called Dr. Shi, known as the Bat Lady, because she manipulates coronaviruses that infect bats. Now, keep in mind that during the questioning from Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky fairly recently, Fauci denied that this same Ralph Beck had conducted gain-of-function research. Again, this is the Ralph Beck in Fauci's attachment that was entitled Beck Shi et al. SARS Gain-of-Function.pdf. Yet under oath before the United States Congress, Fauci denied this. Listen.
Dr. Barrett does not doing gain-of-function research, and if it is, it's according to the guidelines, and it is being conducted in North Carolina. And if you look at the grant and you look at the progress reports, it is not gain-of-function, despite the fact that people tweet that.
Okay, tweet. It was also in his emails. We know that starting last year, a lot of people at NIH were worried that COVID had not occurred naturally. Tucker Carlson last night pointed out that they were concerned it had been instead manipulated in a lab in China. And yet they seem determined to hide those facts from the public. Again, why? On the afternoon of February 1st last year, Fauci held a conference call with several top virologists. Most of the detail of that call are hidden from public view. They've been redacted. We know the call was related to a document entitled Coronavirus Sequence Comparison. Jamie Farrar, a British physician who runs a major research nonprofit, reminded everyone on the call that what they said there was top secret. Quote, information and discussion is shared in total confidence and not to be shared until agreement on next steps, end quote. In other emails, Jeremy Farrar passed along an article from the website Zero Hedge. That piece suggested the coronavirus might have been created as a bioweapon. Well, Zero Hedge was banned from social media platforms. Why is that? Well, for the last year, it has not been allowed to even be discussed. Now, why can't you discuss it? Well, the fact checkers wouldn't allow it. Why wouldn't they? Because Tony Fauci assured the tech monopolies that the coronavirus could not have been man-made. And so the tech monopolies shut down the topic. Listen to Fauci.
A group of highly qualified evolutionary virologists looked at the sequences there and the sequences in bats as they evolve. And the mutations that it took to get to the point where it is now is totally consistent with a jump of a species from an animal to a human.
That is not true. We just revealed on this program last week that there is no evidence that it ever jumped from an animal, from a bat to another animal to a human, or from a bat to a human. Zero evidence. In fact, they can't reinfect bats. Bats won't get the coronavirus. It won't take to them. How is that even possible? So Fauci suggested that he knew that top researchers had decided conclusively that it jumped naturally from animal to human being. But that's not true. 2 days after he said that, one of the virologists that Tony Fauci had funded to conduct the dangerous coronavirus experience in Wuhan wrote to thank him for the help. That man is Peter Daszak. He complained to Fauci that the American tax dollars he had taken for the experiments were being publicly targeted by Fox News reporters. Yet Danzig remained grateful for Tony Fauci's support. Quote, I just wanted to say a personal thank you on behalf of our staff and collaborators. Now, what's weird is most of this email has been redacted. And as Tucker Carlson pointed out last night, it's been redacted under a FOIA section that says we can't release this because it's currently under criminal investigation. So are they under criminal investigation? I hope so. Former Obama official Zeke Emanuel wrote to Fauci to ask a simple question, one that I've said on this program over and over and over again. Hey, what happens to the people who have already had it? Well, what did he say? Fauci's response was, quote, no evidence in this regard, but you would assume that there would be substantial immunity post-infection. Well, yes, but how come you're not ever talking about that? To this day, Tony Fauci has never admitted that in public. In his email to Zeke Emanuel, he admitted something that is also now so obvious: surgical masks, the paper kind that all of us wear, really don't work, that they offer little protection from COVID. Then you get to Rand Paul on masks. Listen.
You're telling everybody to wear a mask, whether they've had an infection or a vaccine. What I'm saying is they have immunity, and everybody agrees they have immunity. What studies do you have that people that have had the vaccine or have had the infection are spreading the infection? If we're not spreading the infection, isn't it just theater?
No, it's
You've had
not.
the vaccine and you're wearing 2 masks. Isn't that theater?
No, that's not. Here we go again with the theater. Let me just state for the record that masks are not theater. Masks are protective. And we
You have
ask
immunity there, theater. If you already have immunity, you're wearing a mask to give comfort to others. You're not wearing a mask because of any sign.
I totally disagree with you.